Osu, I'm Watanabe Shinji, Kudo Daidojiku Shihan, and also the lens of Yuigaryu Karate. Today's video is an analysis of Naihanchi's elbow punch. In this elbow punch, there are two schools. One is to take the hikite high, and the other is low. Which is correct? Can you guess? Yes, right. Both are correct. But if, for example, you are studying in a school that takes hikite high, then when you lower it, you are told, no, it's wrong. Why is that? Can you explain it? What? I don't know. I think it's high because our founder decided so, just it. You said so? Well, that is not wrong, but I don't think it's a good answer. Did your school's founder could have chosen either high or low, but he decided to go with high for no reason? I don't think so. There is a clear reason why the hikite must be high, and that is because there are advantages that cannot be obtained if the hikite is low, and that is why he decided to make it high. I believe so. The opposite is also the same. If you are running in a school that takes hikite low, why should you go low? What are the disadvantages of making it high? Can you explain it clearly? The answer will come later. It also explains the correct way to perform the classic Naihanchi's elbow punch and common mistakes made when performing this. Furthermore, it explains that Naihanchi kata is created as a curriculum in itself. Please take the time to watch it through the end. Then, let's get started. Osu. Okay, let's start with a review of the previous section on Haishu Uke. In this Haishu Uke, the power of centrifugal force and COG, center of gravity shift, which is the source of the power of karate techniques, is used. I now call it Haishu Uke, but you can also call it Haishu Uchi and interpret it as an attacking technique. However, if this technique is interpreted only as a uke and the movement is changed to emphasize centrifugal force rather than COG shift, this is changed to a movement called Haito Uke. This is the new Naihanchi modified by Ito's uncle, right? Conversely, if the emphasis is on shifting the COG rather than centrifugal force, the movement becomes like this. This is the way of Wadoryu Naihanchi. Okay, so here is where we will start today. From here, the next step is elbow punch. And at this point, where to position the hikite is a different question. There are advantages and disadvantages to both high and low positions. First, it is easy to understand that the hikite should be high. What was the essence of the old karate movement represented by the classic Naihanchi? aligning the vertical and horizontal lines of the series to create a ball. And then moving that ball is utilize the power of centrifugal force and COG shift. This gives you the power, speed, and stamina you need to fight without relying on physical ability or use. This was the essence of the old kata movements represented by the classic Naihanchi, wasn't it? For more information, watch this series of videos. And in this elbow punch, the COG of the hand, the COG of the arm, the COG of the chest, and the COG of the opposite arm and the hand. The sense of striking with the horizontal line of these COGs aligned is easier to understand if the hikite is held high. However, if the hikite is held high, the elbow bends at a sharp angle, and when you elbow punch, the angle of the elbow is almost 90 degrees. Elbow punch while extending the elbow. It is a little unnatural, even if it's not. It's not a good thing to bend your elbow at a sharp angle. I'll explain this again later. Conversely, if the hikite position is lowered, the elbow angle is not a problem, but the horizontal line of the center of gravity will not be aligned, and it will be difficult to get the feel of hitting with it aligned. Therefore, in my Naihanchi, the hikite position is in the middle position, 1 fist below the line of the solar plexus. This keeps the elbow at 90 degrees and minimizes the bump in the horizontal line of the COG as much as possible. Okay, now here are a few examples of the mistakes that can be made regarding the classic Naihanchi elbow punch. The first example of a mistake is putting this arm hard and strike. This is no good. When you want to hit hard and fast, you tend to do this. It makes a loud sound and you feel as if you are exerting big power. But this does not convey that force to the opponent. In classic Naihanchi, you do not exert power by opening and closing your body. What was the point of the classic Naihanchi movement? By using the COG of the arms to evoke a shift in the COG of the entire body. The force you exert on your own is small, but the force you can transmit to your opponent is large, wasn't it? In this case, I'm doing haishuruke with my right arm. At this time, it is hard to see if I'm in Naihanchi Dutch, but it is easier to see if I'm in Heisoku Dutch. If I'm a dog, I would not be able to stand in this form. It would lean and fall over like this. I would use this weight of my arms and the clasp of my body to hit the weight of my own body. This is the correct way to do it. By the way, in the new Naihanchi, modified by Ito's uncle, this is not a haishi uke, but a haito uke. Right? Then the power of the COZ shift using the weight of this arm is weakened. So you try to exert power on your own by using your hips. The next mistake is the left fist goes over the frame of the right arm. This is also not correct. The correct way is to tuck it into the frame of the right arm. It is easy to see why if you try it. When the fist comes out above the frame of the right arm, the elbow bends at a sharp angle, creating a semicircular motion with the shoulder joint as the fulcrum. This does not evoke a shift in the COZ and therefore does not lead to power. If you tuck your elbow into the frame of your right arm, the elbow angle will naturally become 90 degrees and you will feel your arm and back become one through your shoulder blades. The third common mistake is to strike with the elbow raised high and the side wide open. If you want to make a strong elbow punch, you may be tempted to use rotational force to strike in this way. But this is no good. The correct way is to strike with a small movement, so as not to open the armpit wide. Raise your elbows high at a sharp angle and strike using the rotational force of your body. This is the Muay Thai way of elbow punch. In classic Naihanchi, the elbow angle is 90 degrees. If your elbow is 90 degrees, you cannot strike with rotational force. If you try to strike with rotational force, it will end up with a hook punch, right? Therefore, you strike the opponent with the force of the COZ shift. This is the correct way of the elbow punch in classic Naihanchi. To add it a little more, this action is of course an elbow punch, but at the same time, it is not an elbow punch. You may be thinking, if this is not an elbow punch, then what is it? The answer is tsuki. Elbow punch and tsuki are the same movements. The only difference is to the position from the elbow to the fist. Therefore, it can be said too that this elbow punch is practicing tsuki using only the part of the upper arm. If you look through the Naihanchi, the first attack is an elbow punch, then a gyakutsuki, and finally a ryotsuki. Right? See, in other words, Naihanchi is a Thai club to learn how to move the COZ with the arms, starting from a short distance at first, and then moving further and further away to increase the range of the attack. Isn't it amazing? That's it for today's video. If you found it interesting and informative, please click the good button. Next time, I'll analyze one of Naihanchi's typical movements, the gyakuzuki from Gedan-barai. In some schools, this tsuki is a kagizuki. In Matsumura Sokon's classic Naihanchi, this tsuki was gyakuzuki. It was also Ito's uncle who changed it to kagizuki. Why did he change it to kagizuki? If you are learning from a school that performs kagizuki, and if you do gyakuzuki here, you will be told, no, it's wrong. Then, can you explain clearly why kagizuki is correct and gyakuzuki is wrong? Now, many schools doing this type of kihon geiko. Right? Seikenzuki, a straight punch, is the basis of karate. I'm sure you have been taught like that. And Naihanchi is a very basic kata in the styles connected to shurite and tomarite. So, why is there no straight punch in that basic kata, but only kagizuki? Hook punch. Can you explain it clearly? If you can't, then I don't think you can say, I know Naihanchi, even if about your own school Naihanchi. But not knowing is nothing to be ashamed of. If you don't know, just learn. That's okay. What is really shameful is to be overconfident that, oh, I know, and not to learn. I think so. Of course, I am still in the process of learning. That is why I call myself the renshi, and do not call myself the kyoshi or hanshi. I'm just presenting the results of my research, which I study, do actually, and then understand and agree with here. I hope that those contents are useful to you. If you are interested in also future videos, please subscribe to this channel and wait for them. Then, see you again. Os.